I'm Sean Burns. I'm acting president of the American University in Kosovo. Mr. Ambassadors, guests, faculty, staff, and students, it is the American University in Kosovo's great pleasure to have the Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Foreign Trade Minister, and Minister for Europe from Belgium come and speak to us today on an extremely important topic for Kosovo. I'm going to keep the introduction to a minute, but let me add that this very young man has an incredibly impressive CV, professional history, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but he has been Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium since 2004. He has served in a variety of posts, including Finance Minister, Justice Minister, and as I said earlier, Foreign Trade Minister. He is a lawyer by training. He has extensive international experience in the realm of economics. He will take questions at the end of his talk. My suggestion is, this is a man who knows international economics. He served on the Board of Governors of the International Monetary Fund. A word to the wise, good man to ask financial questions about. One final point before I hand the podium over to him. Minister Reynders, we're especially honored to have you. You are the highest ranking foreign official to come and speak to us here. That is especially important that an American university has such an important European Union official come here. For us, it's an extremely important and positive gesture. Before I hand the microphone to him, let me reiterate, the minister will take questions, but he has a tight schedule. He will have to leave here at 3:30, so we don't have a lot of time. I'll serve as moderator. Mr. Minister, let's give the minister a nice welcome.
Delighted to be in President today for my first time and to have the chance to share with you my views on how the European Union and its member states can bring life together with you to the European perspective and on the enlargement strategy of the European Union more in general. Next year, in Belgium and so many other countries in Europe, we shall commemorate the beginning of the First World War in 1940. Uncountable ceremonies and activities will be held on the former battlefields. Belgium counts, alas, too many of them. It's a tradition since many centuries, also with Waterloo and with other places. To remember the sufferings of our forebears in their combat for liberty and peace, and to show to the younger generations the horrors of war and the benefits of peace. Being here today in the Balkans, where it all began with one gunshot in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, I cannot but hope that 100 years after the tragedy, important new steps toward the integration of Europe can be accomplished. Not just for you, but for all the countries of the Balkans that have their ultimate future in the European Union. I'm especially happy to be able to talk to an audience of young people, also the President, that will form the dynamic core of the Kosovo society in a few years' time. When we talk about a perspective, it's about the future, and the future is yours. What is happening now in your country and in the region of the Balkans at large is of the utmost importance for you and your own future. So I thank you very much for your interest in this subject, and I hope we can spend an interesting moment of exchange together. I will try to answer to some questions after this lecture. Only 5 years after the end of the Second World War, in the context of uncertainty and disarray, the 6 founding states made the courageous choice, on the proposal of Konrad Adenauer and Robert Schuman, to lay the basis of what has now become the European Union, based on shared values such as peace, freedom, solidarity, or the rule of law. From 1973 until 2007, the European Union membership has been enlarged 6 times. The last enlargement waves have significantly contributed to the reinforcement of democracy, the rule of law, and of security in most parts of Europe. These enlargements also have made possible to strengthen the European Union in order to address global challenges like climate change, but also competition or energy security. Moreover, the 27 and soon 28 member states work together to solve common issues and defend common positions. The level of integration reached by the European Union is without comparison in the world. Today, candidates must adopt over 130,000, 140,000 pages of legislation before joining. In the past months, the level of, for instance, the economic integration, in particular in the Eurozone, has been considerably deepened again, and this movement will go on in the foreseeable future. Today, around 500 million people live in our prosperous and stable union. The member states reconfirmed 10 years ago, during the second A.U. Western Balkans Summit in Thessaloniki, the European perspective of the Western Balkans countries, which was already announced at the first ever meeting in Zagreb in 2000. This reconfirmation means a clear choice to spread further the European objectives of prosperity, peace and stability. For Belgium, the future of the Balkan countries and of Kosovo lie within the European Union. We all stand ready to help these countries to move closer to the EU. Belgium supported Kosovo's independence from the very beginning in February 2008, not only within the EU institutions but also in multilateral fora such as the IMF, the World Bank or the BRD. Belgium has defended the interests of Europe's youngest nation and its integration as a responsible and constructive member of the concert of nations. And we will try to do the same in the United Nations if it's possible with the support of other partners. Belgium was one of the first EU member states which offered the young independent Republic of Kosovo assistance through the organization of a training session on EU policy for Kosovo diplomats and civil servants in September 2009. This training session, which took place in Brussels, gave the young diplomats and civil servants the opportunity to discuss many themes of interest, such as law enforcement and international security, public diplomacy, consular assistance, visa policy, and migration management. The young trainees had also the opportunity to meet with officials of the European Commission and to visit the European Parliament. This training session turned out to be a great success and was repeated in October 2012 for another group of 10 young diplomats. In addition, Belgian experts also delivered assistance to Kosovo through the TAIEX instrument of the European Commission. The Federal Police participated 2 times in 2011 TAIEX expert missions on arms legislation. In 2011 and 2012, Belgian experts took part in a workshop here in Pristina on the prevention, control and diagnostics of diseases in the bee population and in a seminar on combating terrorism, 2 different problems but 2 important problems in the region. Further, the Belgian health authorities organized in November 2012, together with the DG Sanko of the Commission, a study visit in Belgium for officials from the Ministry of Health of Kosovo. The realization of this European future and the pace of the accession lie nevertheless to a large extent in your hands. I don't want to underestimate the difficult reforms ahead, nor the political patience necessary to explain to your citizens that the path will be long and that it will require numerous and sometimes painful reforms. But after these demanding efforts, they will in the end take benefit from it. Your political leaders have an historic role to play, and therefore an historic opportunity to deliver on the promises of European integration made to your people, by not creating unrealistic expectations and by demonstrating the political maturity expected from countries with the ambition of joining the EU. The end of supervised independence last September meant that Kosovo is now taking full and accountable responsibility for the future of its citizens and its institutions, including a fair and secure treatment of its minorities. In that regard, and in the context of the spirit of the credibility of a process based on clear understandings, I would like to stress our mutual responsibility. The Member States and the Commission must continue to make sure that each accession application is judged step by step and handled upon its own merits, rewarding genuine progress of a candidate country on its path towards the EU, without artificial timeframes nor interference of bilateral issues outside EU obligations. Indeed, we attach great importance not to import major bilateral issues within the EU. On the contrary, full attention must be given to the reinforcement of good neighbourly relations. Any applicant can only join the EU once it will be fully prepared to bear the responsibilities of membership. On the side of applicant countries, this supposes the awareness that the path will be long and will require numerous and sometimes difficult reforms, and fostering a climate allowing for regional cooperation and good neighbourly relations. The rule of law is at the center of our preoccupations, and for that reason, the Commission has proposed to reschedule the succession of negotiating chapters. We now start the accession negotiations by opening difficult and essential sub-chapters related to the rule of law, fundamental rights, freedoms and judiciary, and we close them only at the end of the whole process in order to give more time to begin with these reforms. We shall be able to deliver together on the promise to our citizens, unification of the Western Balkans with the European family in a common space of peace and prosperity. If only through our mutual efforts in supporting the credibility of the enlargement process. 2012 has seen major progress by a number of countries of the Western Balkans on their road toward the European Union. Croatia will very soon become the 28th member state. Accession negotiations have been opened with Montenegro. Serbia has been declared a candidate country. For Kosovo as well, the developments are becoming more and more tangible. The visa liberalization dialogue started in January 2012, and the related roadmap, a structured dialogue on the rule of law, was launched in Brussels last May. The feasibility study for a stabilization and association agreement between the EU and Kosovo was presented by the Commission in October 2012, as well as the confirmation by the Commission of its readiness to negotiate a framework agreement for Kosovo's participation in EU programs. In 2013, it is crucial that the momentum for enlargement is maintained by adopting and implementing with vigor the necessary reforms. The Council conclusions on enlargement of last December have set an ambitious program for the first half of 2013. Next week, the Commission will present reports on Albania, the former Republic Yugoslav of Macedonia, Serbia, and Kosovo. We expect the candidate countries to meet the expectations and to deliver on the necessary conditions so that we can go ahead with the opening of the accession negotiations with Serbia and with the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. I also hope we will be able to approve a negotiating mandate to start negotiations with Kosovo on a stabilization and association agreement. For the sake of completeness, I also briefly mention the other ongoing enlargement processes. The negotiations with Iceland are on the right track. We expect that after the elections, the new government will continue to show the same willingness of joining the EU. On Turkey, after 3 years of stagnation in the negotiation process, Belgium hopes that a new negotiating chapter could be opened soon and that this could forward a more general revival on the pace of negotiation. For Montenegro, in accordance with the new approach adopted for the next accession negotiations, we emphasize the importance to open the chapter 23 on, among others, fundamental rights, and the chapter 24 on justice, freedom and security at the beginning of the process in order to give this candidate more time to prepare the necessary reforms. For Albania, the granting of candidate status is subject to the completion of key measures in the areas of judicial and public administration reform and revision of the parliamentary rules of procedure. Additional actions undertaken by the Albanian authorities to fight corruption and organized crime, as well as the conduct of the election of June 23rd, will be also taken into account. Finally, Bosnia and Herzegovina should bring its constitution into compliance with the European Convention of Human Rights before the entry into force of Stabilization and Association Agreement. The ball is in its court, and we encourage Bosnia and Herzegovina to enhance its efforts in that way. What do we expect exactly from Kosovo in order to move closer towards the European Union? First, to meet the 4 short-term priorities concerning the rule of law, public administration, protection of minorities and trade, which are identified in the feasibility study. Second, to continue to implement in good faith all agreements reached with Belgrade in the framework of the dialogue which was facilitated by our High Representative, Lady Ashton. A tangible and sustainable improvement in relations between Kosovo and Serbia is needed and should gradually result at the end of the day, as people say, in the normalization of these relations. The government of Kosovo will have to give sufficient room or local autonomy to the Serb communities, mainly in the north of Kosovo, according to the best standards of human rights and the rule of law. On the other hand, the Serb government will have to accommodate with a situation where a considerable number of persons of Serb descent live from now on in another state, but where they enjoy the high standards of protection and have meaningful tools to organize their own lives according to their own traditions. This is exactly the same message I gave yesterday during my interesting talks in Serbia. I'm very grateful for all the passion and valuable work Cathy Ashton has undertaken in this respect. It was also not possible to reach an agreement between the parties in the last round of negotiations on April 2nd, but I trust that a breakthrough is still possible in the coming days. Maybe the moment has now come for the European Union to put forward some elements of a solution on the more delicate elements, such as on police issues or security. Hence, probably a more complex compromise is needed, in which each side can find itself. There is now a momentum which must be used, for it is in the interest of both parties, Serbia and Kosovo, to realize a breakthrough now. I really hope that the Commission will have at its disposal enough elements in order to present a positive report next week, which should enable the Council to decide on the opening of the negotiation of the Association and Stabilization Agreement. Let me seize this opportunity to say a few words on visa liberalization. I know that it's a very important issue in Kosovo. It is related to the European perspective, but it is a different process from that of enlargement or of the association agreement. I understand that visa liberalization is a very important issue for your country because it makes the European perspective more tangible for the citizens. The government has therefore an obligation and a duty towards its citizens to effectively fulfill the criteria defined in the roadmap. In that respect, I recall that the visa liberalization process is essentially a technical and merit-based process. Consequently, I underline the importance of a full and rigorous implementation of all the conditions and a clear communication towards the population on the scope and the limits of this decision in order to avoid any misunderstandings. All of this, trust me, is not because Kosovo citizens would be considered as second-rate citizens, neither because of double standards, but because we consider Kosovo as a future and fully fledged member of the European Union with rights and duties vis-à-vis its European partners. Finally, and coming back for a moment on the issue of the rule of law, I want to express my entire support for the difficult and sometimes delicate missions of EULEX Kosovo, the EU's mission created in 2008 in order to assist Kosovo in the rule of law area. In confronting unacceptable practices of corruption, dealing with the war crimes, strengthening the judicial structures of the country, these missions plays a key role in assisting Kosovo in reaching to the EU standard. Full cooperation with the mission is a key element to demonstrate the will of Kosovo authorities to integrate the European dimension. EULEX should be respected and be supported wherever possible and in the best possible cooperation with other international actors such as KFOR. Belgium, for its part, plays a small but concrete role in this process by hosting in Brussels the EULEX Special Investigative Task Force. This task force of EULEX is examining more in detail claims on alleged war crimes and trafficking in human organs that were made in a report by the Council of Europe. To conclude, I should like, Mr. President, to emphasize that we strongly encourage the government and all public and private actors to focus without any delay on what is essential for the future prosperity and stability of your country. Trust, full and efficient implementation of the legislation and requirements related to the European process, boosting socio-economic development for all, guaranteeing against all odds the rule of law and security for each and every citizen at all times. What the country needs now is a clear vision for the future and a large democratic consensus to move on. Not just to tick boxes on Euro-EU path, neither to please the international community, but rather in the general interest of current and future Europeans, and to provide a decent life to all the citizens of the Republic of Kosovo. As a future generation, dear students, you will play a very important role in this transformation. You can rely on Belgium's unwavering support in this great and historic adventure. I was very pleased to come for the first time in Pristina. I had a very interesting meeting with the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, but I'm sure that now is the time for the European Union to play a role in the last days of the possible negotiations among Serbia and Kosovo. And I want just to add something about the possible final agreement. We need to work on specific issues. Maybe first on security is the most important issue for many people. But we need to work with two principles on the procedure. Maybe with a transition process, so not to try to reach a goal tomorrow, but to say what could be, what should be the situation in 10 years. And how it's possible to have a roadmap to start from now until such a situation in 10 years. And second, but I'm just saying that coming from Brussels, so coming from a very complex European Union, but also a very complex country like Belgium, you need to find a way to have a complex solution for such an issue. Because it's only with a complex solution that it's possible to explain on both sides that there is no winner and no loser. With a very simple solution, it's maybe a very good thing from one partner, but it will be a catastrophe for the other one. So I don't want to express another view that it's quite important in the next days to find a way to solve such an issue with a transition process and maybe with some complex solutions for the different issues on the table. And finally, I want to repeat that it's a very important moment. There is now a window of opportunity, not only for Kosovo and for Serbia, but maybe also for the entire region. Because after that, it will be very difficult to go back to such a moment. Why? Because we will have maybe very bad evolutions in some countries in the regions if we don't reach an agreement, but also because there are so many other issues on the table of the European Union that it will be very difficult to take on board all the member states of the European Union to support the process. So I want just to repeat, and from Belgium we support such a process, but we ask and we urge to stay in dialogue in the next days and to try to find a way to make a final agreement. If you look to the last months, it's amazing what was possible. Not only with some specific agreements, but just to have, to give an example, 8 meetings with the 2 prime ministers of Kosovo and Serbia. Think for some seconds to the past. They look to maybe 1 year ago, it was maybe impossible to think about a shake hand among 2 prime ministers. And now it's become to be normal to have a meeting in such a beautiful city like Brussels with the 2 partners. So we are at the end of the process, and I will be very pleased to come back, maybe after such an agreement, to see what is possible to go further with the negotiation, and maybe at the end to have 2 new member states in the European Union. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I think, and I appreciate, I think we all appreciate the Minister gave us a very clear message. I heard reform, compromise, patience, rule of law. Let me open the floor to questions. The Minister has several minutes and be happy to take any questions. Are there any out there? Please, Michael.
Since several of the EU member states are not recognizing Kosovo as an independent nation, how can Kosovo expect to be treated as a full partner in governance and EU membership process and all this?
So there are different reasons to don't recognize Kosovo. I said for Belgium it was a duty to do that. so close as possible from the Declaration of Independence. But for some countries, they are neighbor countries of Kosovo. For others, they have specific internal issues. If you look to Cyprus, it's quite difficult to recognize a new independent state, and if you look to Spain, it will be maybe possible to organize a referendum in Catalonia, so it's not so evident to recognize a new country. But we have 5 countries having such a problem with recognition of Kosovo. And I want just to say that if it's possible to reach an agreement among Kosovo and Serbia, among Pristina and Belgrade, I'm sure that it will be possible to agree with that for all the member states of the European Union. Why? I was in Rome for the installation of the new Pope, but I don't want to be more Catholic than the Pope. So if it's possible to have an agreement among Kosovo and Serbia, nobody will ask more than that. So that's the solution, I'm sure. But for the moment, of course, we need to live with such a decision. But, of course, I said it's an important moment, also because we will have a report next week, I said, from the European Commission on the 16th of April, to see if it's possible to start a negotiation with Serbia and to start a negotiation with Kosovo for the association agreement. But it's not just to start a process inside the European Union with the General Affairs Council and then the European Council, but it's also to start a procedure inside the member states. And just to give a small example, to go to the German Parliament and to discuss about the report in the Bundestag and in the Bundesrat. So we need some time to organize that between the mid-April and June. So it's that the solution. But if there is an agreement, I'm sure that it's possible for the 5 member states to say, okay, we are going further because we don't want to be more Catholic than the Pope, or more Orthodox than the Patriarch, of course.
I see a question there.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Liana Perani, editor-in-chief of the news agency InfoGlobe here in Pristina. Minister, you said that there will be no winners and no loser. Or yes, loser and no winner in the case agreement is reached or is not reached between Pristina and Belgrade. May you please elaborate on this? What do you mean by that, in concrete terms?
I want just to give one example. I know that there are, in the northern part of Kosovo, 4 municipalities with a very large Serb community. And there are some discussions to say, is it possible to give some competences to each of those municipalities, or is it possible to give some competence to an association of the 4 municipalities? And it's a huge discussion. I have said to the partners on both sides, it's maybe possible to give some competences to each municipality and some others to an association. To give an example, healthcare, education, culture, it's maybe not a problem to organize that at the level of an association. But it's maybe not the same for security issue. It's just to give an example. It's not the solution, to give an example. And again, I'm sure that it's quite important to have such a complex solution, because if you have a very clear solution with only 2 partners, it will be evident after some minutes that there is a winner and there is a loser. Just coming back from the European Union and from Brussels, I said, so also a very complex country, Belgium, with 2 major partners, of course, 3 regions, 3 communities, but 2 major partners, Dutch-speaking part of the country and French-speaking part. We have elaborated so many complex solutions for one single reason. You need to have difficulties on both sides. It's the best way to have a good agreement. If nobody is happy, it's a good compromise. If you have one partner happy and the other one not, it's impossible to implement. And I want just to add, the only one important thing is not to agree, it's to be able after to implement the agreement. Because if you have just an agreement and then it's impossible to implement, it's a catastrophe. So it's the reason why I'm sure that we need to have a complex solution to try to give an answer to both partners, but also to have a transitional process and not just to say what should be the definitive situation the day after. It will be a definitive situation maybe in 10 years, but with some phases. And at European level, not only in Belgium, at European level we are doing that all the time. And we have organized, I was Minister of Finance, we have organized a new regulation about savings, about the taxation on energy and something like that. Because all the time there's many exceptions during 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, but after that, after 10 years, it's the same rule for everybody. And
so when you were talking about giving more autonomy to the local population in the north, this is what you meant. Finding a compromise on competences related to the association.
Yes, but in Europe we have the principle of subsidiarity. Sometimes it's more efficient to manage one competence at the local level. Also here in Pristina, maybe more efficient to manage some competence with the local authority than with the federal authority. But that's a choice, and I repeat, it's maybe not with the same solution for all the competences. And of course, at the end, it becomes to be a complex mechanism. But I repeat also, it's easier to explain in Belgrade and in Pristina some advantages and some difficulties with a complex solution than just to explain that we have win or lose after the negotiations.
Thank you.
Did I see another hand back there?
The American University. I would like to ask you whether you think that a missing political agreement between Serbia and Kosovo has actually undermined the performance of U.K in fulfilling its mandate in terms of prosecuting war crime or corruption.
I will discuss tonight with a lot of members of such a mission, and we will try to see what are the progress made or not. But I want also to underline that there's not only a mission for ULEX. It's first of all a mission inside the country, because if you want to fight against corruption, against war crimes, against human trafficking or something like that, you need to have a very good collaboration inside the country. And I'm sure that there are some progress made, but first of all, in the adoption of new laws, in the introduction of new regulations, but we need to do more about implementation of that. So we need to do more with the jurisdictions, with the administration, with the police, and with other people and civil servants to implement. And it's not new, it's the case in many other countries. There is a first phase to put into force a lot of laws, but then to be able to apply on the ground such a law. But there are maybe also some problems with ULEX. I don't want to say that it's just an internal issue. But we are following the process, and we are thinking there are lots of things to do in the future for the implementation of those new laws and those new regulations. It's not enough to have a vote in the parliament. After that, you need to apply. Yes?
I'm actually from Belgium, and I work in EULEX. And
so you may
I will not answer the previous question, but first of all, thank you very much for your visit, which is also for the Belgians serving in Kosovo, really encouraging for us. My question to you, Minister, is you touched upon Belgium is indeed a complex country. We have different communities, we all live together, we work together, and we can reach agreements together, which is something we have in common, I believe, with Kosovo. So based on your very rich national political career, do you have a personal piece of advice or lessons learned from the past which you would like to pass on to the political leaders or the future of Kosovo here present today on how communities within a country can reach agreements? Thank you.
In some processes to organize a negotiation, sometimes it's easy to find a way to have a solution. Sometimes, like in Belgium, some years ago, it took more than 500 days to form a new government. So we have a tradition of compromise, but sometimes it's very long to organize. And why? Because it's more complicated to reach an agreement about the institutional framework, the relations among different communities, among different groups, than about the budget and among other kind of issues. And so we need to be patient, but we need to stay at the table. And I've said that yesterday in Belgrade and today in Kosovo and in Pristina, we need to stay in dialogue. And the most important achievement in the last months is maybe not so visible in Brussels, but it must be visible here. It was 8 meetings among the 2 prime ministers. It's amazing to think about that. I said 1 year ago, it was quite impossible to think about a shake hand between the 2 prime ministers. Now, it's become to be normal to have such a lot of discussion. So we need to be patient, And you need also to stay in dialogue. We were asked that for the next days. But saying that, there's a specific situation also in the region. You said there are some comparisons. We are living in Europe with minorities, but with minorities inside the country, so national minorities. Until now, it's not exactly the same in the Balkans, and certainly not here. I have the feeling that for Belgrade, it's maybe not a Kosovo national minority in the northern part, it's a Serbian minority, so a minority from another country. And that is very different. We don't have exactly the same in Europe. We have national minorities, and we try to protect minorities inside the same country, but not coming from abroad. And here, because we have a discussion about the definition of new nations, we have sometimes such a situation with a sort of minority coming from a neighbor country. And that is not so evident to manage in the first year. So it's the reason why I said my advice is to take care of a transitional period and not to think about a definitive situation for the day after. You need to think about the situation in 10 years and how it's possible, step by step, to go to such a definitive situation. And it's not so evident to manage a minority in one country but coming from another one. In many other countries, it's not the case. It's different ethnic groups of a group with another language, of another culture, but within the same nation. Here, we are not so far, so we need to take some time for sure.
To open a discussion between Kosovo side and Serbia side regarding the Northern Mitrovica problem.
Northern
Mitrovica problem, yes.
But it's maybe the last issue for the moment. We try to solve the issue about security. What is the problem now? It's to be sure that it's possible to know what are the final requests on both sides. I'm coming from Belgrade. I'm sure that the most important issue is the organization of the police and the justice. And they want to have some guarantees for protection of the minority in the northern part, for the 4 municipalities. I listened to many comments about that. And so we need to put on the table in such a negotiation some options. And I repeat, some complex options. I don't want to explain more in detail, but I said there are some requests in Belgrade to organize some competences at the level of an association of 4 municipalities. And there is a willingness in Pristina to organize some competences at the level of each municipality. And I've said, why not, for some competences, a transfer on organization at the level of the association, and for others, maybe more sensitive, at the level of the municipalities, like for other municipalities in the country. And that's the way to put new negotiation. But I have the feeling that after the meetings with the 2 prime ministers in the 2 countries and other members of the government and Minister of Foreign Affairs here, there's a real willingness to stay in dialogue, and they are hoping that it will be possible until maybe beginning of next week to find a final agreement. And that's the only one way to discuss about this northern part of the country, is to be around the table and to try to see what are the possible options, but I repeat, maybe with a complex solution, with different elements inside the solution, to be able to explain on both sides that it's maybe difficult, but it's manageable. And I repeat, a good compromise about an institutional framework is a compromise where nobody is happy. If there is one people happy with such a compromise, it's the beginning of the end, because the other is thinking that you've lost. And if you have, I repeat, a loser and a winner, it's impossible to implement.
Many thanks, Mr. Minister, and thank you all for joining us.